The NFL just got exposed yet again, and it occurred on a national broadcast with an undefeated team on Thursday Night Football with Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins.
Tua Tagovailoa going down in a way that made people really uncomfortable, seeing how violent football is, and his fingers splayed because it seemed like it was obvious after he was taken off on a stretcher that he had a concussion, and it seemed also obvious that it was his second concussion in a couple of weeks, even though the Dolphins were saying it's a back injury.
Okay, I want to pause here because this is a very important clarification. It was not a couple weeks, unfortunately. Actually, when the Dolphins took on the Bills, when we believe Tua had his first concussion, that was September 25th. This Thursday night game was September 29th. That's 4 days.
I am a sports medicine physician who is fellowship trained to treat concussions.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Brian Suter.
Rightfully so. Many medical professionals are calling out the National Football League.
The injury that he sustained on Sunday was a concussion. I was astonished that he was able to come back in the second half. That means it had to clear not one, but 2 concussion protocol doctors.
Quick note on that. The NFL Physician Society claims its mission is to provide excellence in the medical and surgical care to the athletes in the NFL and to provide direction and support for the athletic trainers in charge of the care for these athletes. The Miami Dolphins' team are these folks who should today face questions on their handling of Tua's injuries in the past 4 days.
This is a big deal to me. We just regressed 20 years in NFL concussions. That's how important this was.
Tua falls backward and basically hits his head on the turf again, kind of similar to what we saw happen last week. It's a combination of whiplash, his head striking the turf. So again, a clear mechanism for a brain injury, brain trauma. What we witness afterwards then with Tua having his hands sort of contorted in that awkward position is what we call posturing, right? This is similar to the fencing response that we can see, these abnormal posturings that occur in the setting of significant brain injuries or concussion. His fingers are rigid like that because of this continuous electrical signal being sent to those muscles as a result of that head trauma.
Best case scenario, this is only a concussion. There are so many worse things, it's not even funny. One that scares me the most is called second impact syndrome. Any person watching this, I want you to learn about this right now. After you sustain a head injury and you do not allow it to fully heal, which there's no way it could be, you then sustain another concussive blow, which causes swelling in the brainstem, and you die. Yes, it's that serious. This is really, really serious.
Let's go over the chain of events. Against the Bills, Tua attempted a pass and was pushed to the ground by Bills linebacker Matt Milano. He slammed his head on the ground. Clearly, Tua was woozy when he got up off the ground, shook his head to quote-unquote clear the cobwebs, stumbled to the ground, then grabbed his head not once, but twice. Thus, because they considered it a back injury, he was cleared to play for Thursday Night Football. Although an investigation was launched, the Dolphins claimed that their quarterback suffered a back injury. There was not a single time in that Bills-Dolphins highlight that he grabbed his back. Tua stuck to the story. NFL media reported his back locked up, and it was curtains. It did not appear to question, NFL media, the Dolphins in the slightest.
Knowing what we know today, there is no reason whatsoever for him to have come back to the game. No.
Dr. Bennett Amalu, a neuropathologist who discovered the first ever case of CTE in a former player's brain, that being Mike Webster, spoke with TMZ Sports on the NFL and Tua's injury. One doctor in 2009 even said the NFL tried to blackball Dr. Bennett Amalu, Lock him out, marginalize him was the quote, because he was reporting the findings of what we know to be a link between head trauma and playing football.
The idea that we have this concussion issue under control is a myth. We're still not recognizing all the concussions that happen. That repetitive subconcussive injury, where you may not even feel it, adds up over time.
Chris Nowinski is a former wrestler turned neuroscientist. He co-founded Boston University CTE Center. He spoke with Dan Le Batard.
You also said, after seeing what happened, fire the medical staffs and coaches. That is something that never happens. Like, I understand why you're saying that, but you know good and well that that's not one of the possibilities here.
No. I mean, I understand that there will probably not be any punishment, sadly, for the people who put him out there. But I'm letting people know that I believe there should be. Like, you just cannot mess with someone's life and their future like this. And so I can't imagine any patient trusting the doctor who made that call. I don't know who it is. I don't care. And then the coaches should know better. Like, I think even if you don't want to believe that it's a concussion, to put your star quarterback in the future franchise who's having an amazing season at risk of losing his season in week 4, because when you can tell as a coach he had a concussion, is just like the most strategically ridiculous choice to ever make in the world.
You are saying, I'm not hearing anyone speaking this extremely from the medical community, but this is also something that's emotional and personal to you because of what you've endured, correct?
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily speaking from the medical community. That's me as somebody who's lived through this and knows that it doesn't have to be this way. Saying that medical staffs and teams have to take responsibility for people's lives. That's their job. And so when you make a colossal mistake like this, there needs to be responsibility. Like, again, I'm yelling before the game and all week, don't play him. He could die. If he died, I think the legal, the legal world looks into this, because medically he should not have been out there.
Now, beware. I am giving you a warning. Roger Goodell is going to spew platitudes similar to this.
There's nothing more important than the player health and safety.
Or some stuff like this.
Throughout history, football has evolved. It has become safer and safer again.
Meanwhile, one doctor, whose name is Dr. Jorge Caballero, put out a thread. I'm going to highlight some of it, but it is absolutely must see. And this is what it looks like when a doctor is not affiliated with the National Football League and does not have an agenda. People need to understand that these players are treated like fine-tuned machines until they're not. They're put through the ringer and then discarded like a used napkin. As bad as things look on TV, I assure you, the scenes during surgery and recovery are much, much worse. Lots of folks on here, particularly the obnoxious know-it-all sports fans, think they're being clever by pointing out that these players get paid handsomely for their services. They love to say ignorant crap like they know what they're signing up for. We're talking 20 to 30-year-olds with knees, ankles, hips, elbows, shoulders, necks that would make a 70 to 80-year-old feel spry. That stuff only gets worse with age. The pain and the limited mobility accelerates the moment that they're no longer surrounded by a multi-million-dollar staff whose sole job is to dull the pain and address the symptoms just enough to get them back in the game, and that's precisely the problem here. It's easy to cover up the symptoms of a concussion, but the trauma is there. The brain needs time to heal, just like any other part of the body. If you try to play with an unresolved concussion, there's a good chance you'll end up temporarily or permanently paralyzed. Concussions have the same potential to be career-ending injuries as horse collar tackles, but the NFL and NFLPA treat them differently. Why? Why treat injuries to the femoral head, i.e. Bo Jackson disease, appropriately while injuries to the brain are regarded as an inconvenience? The answer is simple. The NFL physician crew is an old boys network controlled by orthopedic surgeons. The numbers do not lie. And the 404 error under the diversity tab on the NFL Physicians Society website pretty much sums it up. And they have exactly zero neurologists or neurosurgeons on their rosters. Zero. This is not an accident. This is how the game behind the game works. The game is simple. If you're an unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant and you want to keep being an unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant, then you can't forget that you're unaffiliated. And that unaffiliated is not the same thing as independent. Get it? So long as the NFL and NFLPA keep surrounding themselves with physicians who are willing to tell them what they want to hear, players will keep getting concussed and their playing careers will be cut short. So long as players uncritically accept the lie that everyone involved in their concussion evaluation is there to keep them safe, nothing will change. It's a lie for the simple reason that the incentives are grossly misaligned. There are inherent conflicts of interest. The NFLPA should be demanding truly independent neurologists. The only way to achieve that is for the NFLPA to pay for those services directly and for the staff and neurologists to be swapped out every season. This is too important to be left to the clubs themselves. Anything less is a disservice to the players and to their friends, family, and neighbors who will be there to witness their decompensation long after the NFL is done with them. It's unconscionable that any physician involved in the NFL's concussion protocol game of charades should be able to sleep at night knowing that they are directly responsible for one of their patients showing obvious signs of posturing on national TV. And then Dr. Jorge Caballero shows what that posturing is and explains it to us. I don't know how much more clear we have to be on this. Lastly, a point that I heard this morning on sports radio that I must echo. Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel proclaimed that it was a positive thing, that Tua's injury was nothing more serious than a concussion. Nothing more serious than a concussion. Do we know what we're talking about here? Do we know the effects of what concussions do to a football player, a soccer player, anybody who suffers it long term? That's nonsense. And thus, Nowinski wrote as a reply to this damning statement, I don't think this guy gets it. A concussion is a traumatic brain injury, and posturing suggests brainstem injury. It's pretty high on the list of serious medical consequences of football.